We made USAA insurance for veterans like Liz and Mike when they got a bigger car for their soon-to-be bigger family. USAA helped them get covered and find savings.
That was the easy part.
USAA, what you're made of, we're made for.
Hey RotoViz radio listener, this is Curtis Patrick from the Dynasty Command Center podcast, and I've got a special deal for you today. Go to rotoviz.com, click the subscribe button, put the 12-month subscription in your cart, and use promo code RVRadio2021. That's RVRadio2021, and you're going to save 10%. Taking advantage of this deal, getting your hands on what's included in the package is the best way to enhance your performance this year. So go to rotoviz.com and subscribe now.
Hello and welcome back to the RotoViz Best Ball podcast. My name is Colin Kelly. My pleasure to bring you the show, and it is my pleasure to be joined on the show by Zachary Kruger. Of course, we have been running through some drafts recently. We had Sean Siegel on for a couple of draft episodes. Now we are drafting ourselves, and on this episode, we are on the clock. So you will hear us draft kind of between round 1 and round 8 or 9, and then we are going to release a second show that will be the remainder of the draft, and then the recap of how we think the process went. Some interesting selections here that you'll hear. Very interested if you want to share your thoughts with us on Twitter. Let us know if you would go the same way or make some different picks than we did. But hopefully you're going to enjoy this. So we're just ready for round 1. We're about to be on the countdown towards our pick. So let's jump into it. So Zach, we're not on the clock yet, but we are up and running in the draft. First pick off the board, big surprise to everyone, Christian McCaffrey. So we'll see what happens. There is what we expected to happen then is Mr. Travis Kelce is off the board. So this is why planning out and being ready ahead of time helps with these decisions. I'm expecting Dalvin Cook to go here, and then I think Dalvin Cook goes, it's an automatic here for us with Darren Waller.
Yeah, I would expect to see Dalvin Cook go off next. There have been a couple times where things have gotten a little bit crazy.
Waller could go before that. Could it get that crazy?
you never know. In the draft that we were in just the other day with Sean, I believe it was Derrick Henry who went before Saquon Barkley and Alvin Kamara or something crazy like that. So people do sometimes do things a little bit differently than what you would expect. We have longtime listener and fan Frank Duffy drafting in front of us here.
Yeah, that's my concern.
Yeah. Well, exactly. We have him in front of us. So if he's watched or listened to or read most of our stuff, he may know what we're thinking here. But if Frank doesn't go with Darren Waller, then I think that we'll be fine here. And he went Alvin Kamara, so we can go ahead and take Darren Waller. This has kind of gone as planned.
Let's use our time on the clock anyway. But yeah, Darren Waller will be the pick here. I was a little bit concerned there because Frank is a long-time listener of the show, and I didn't know what was going to happen. So thankfully, Waller is available to us. I think it gives us a lot of flexibility then as we move. It is the key first part of our draft process here, as we're hoping. No temptation to go any different direction here?
No, I think if I was to not go with a tight end, I think the next player who I'd probably consider going with would be Saquon Barkley. I like his receiving upside that he has. We're hoping that he bounces back from an injury-plagued season that cut his season short to only 2 games. Derrick Henry is not a guy who I'm not interested in just because of the lack of PPR upside. Jonathan Taylor has a Week 14 bye, which for those who maybe didn't hear the previous few episodes of my draft with Sean, Week 14 is actually a playoff week in this tournament. So if you're drafting Week 14 players early, you just need to be in mind that if your team makes the playoffs, you are literally without your first round pick in that Week 14 playoff game. In this case, Jonathan Taylor, who kind of would blow up your whole strategy at least a little bit when you consider the fact that some people, even if they're not doing a full robust RB approach, maybe they're going with a single elite running back approach, taking Jonathan Taylor, expecting him to anchor the running back offense as long as he's healthy, and then you are without him in the first week of the playoff matchup, kind of makes it pointless to get all the way there and not have your studs in that first game. So Jonathan Taylor is a player who I'm avoiding simply because of the bye week round that he gets in that first week of this tournament. Now, what would be interesting to see happen, which I can't imagine it would be crazy to see if Jonathan Taylor for some reason made it to us in the second round. That should not happen. I don't think think that anyone's going to be quite that woke on him to avoid him. But if it did happen, he's slipping right now. That would be interesting to see.
But I can't see it happening. I think though, I think the decision would be if you were drafting at the 204, 205, if he did manage to get to that point. Still going though here, we're on the board at the 111 at the moment, and still Jonathan Taylor's there. For people listening to the show, if you haven't heard already, I'm a big fan of Jonathan Taylor for this season. But as you mentioned, this is where knowing your strategy, knowing your draft, knowing the rules and the playoff setup really do matter, because you're in a situation where the Colts, the Patriots, the Eagles, and the Dolphins all have a bye in week 14. That's going to rule them out if you get through. Now, obviously, the big positive of this that Sean has mentioned on some of our shows is they have a situation where they are obviously going to give you 13 full weeks in the season. So you're going to get more points on the way to the playoffs, but you're going to miss it then when you get into the opportunity at the jackpot. So it is. And again, with running backs, like, do they make it all the way to week 14 anyway? If we're drafting, say a Saquon Barkley, if we're drafting Christian McCaffrey, same thing could happen, but we have to plan for what we know exactly. And one thing we know exactly is the Colts are not going to be playing on week 14. So important to know that. But no, I'm a big fan of Jonathan Taylor this season, but obviously that's a big blow. So outside of this format, I'm all in on him. If we're playing just regular best ball, playing season long, all in on that pick as well. So there he goes off the board at the 112, one of the latest I've seen him. But again, that shows that the guys drafting in this league, that's just something to note. There's a little bit of everyone's paying attention here. Nobody was taking him at the 106. So we'll see how it goes here now. But lots of running backs going off the board, as we would kind of expect. Tyreek Hill, the only wide receiver through the first round. We have our tight end in Darren Waller, and the other tight end off the board was Travis Kelce. So we're into the second round. What's your thoughts here now as we go in? I think I'm looking towards wide receiver, as I mentioned in the pre-show. But any particular targets that you want over others here?
Well, we have right now still on the board Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, and AJ Brown, who is kind of the guys who we had pre-planned as targets that we would want to get. Stephon Diggs just went. I think we would have obviously been willing to take him over any of those guys should they have fallen. But this point in time, of the guys that we have marked for kind of this area in the draft, I think it would still be Calvin Ridley, who I would like to get. Ever since that Julio Jones trade went down, I think Calvin Ridley is a player who's just going to see a lot of targets. One thing that I don't think has been talked about quite enough as it should be is, before the Julio Jones trade, we were all concerned. I guess concerned's not the wrong word. We were all optimistic that Calvin Ridley, or that AJ Brown, was going to be a player who might possibly lead the league with just a tremendous amount of targets, because there was no legitimate wide receiver playing behind him. Now, I think Calvin Ridley has kind of flipped into that position. Maybe he should be that wide receiver we're talking about in the conversation of potentially leading the league in wide receiver targets. I think he could be in line for 150 target season. He's not going quite as high as I think he should be. He's going middle of the second round. If he falls to us, I'm probably giving Calvin Ridley every chance I get, just because I think the target volume is going to be that high, and the Atlanta Falcons have been passing a tremendous amount over the last 3 seasons. I believe Matt Ryan has been top 3 quarterback in pass attempts. So I like Ridley whenever we can get him in this spot.
Yeah, we're 1 pick away. Ridley is there. Some of the latest picks to have gone is George Kittle, Aaron Jones, Antonio Gibson, and Stephon Diggs, and that order being George Kittle being the last pick off the board at 206. So we're on the 207. I'm with you. The other player that I'd be tempted to go here, I would really, to be honest, I'm still tempted on Devontae Adams. I think, I'm still hoping as a Green Bay Packers fan, Aaron Rodgers is back. If Aaron Rodgers is back, I think Devontae Adams is probably the wide receiver 1 in fantasy. But when we're looking at it here, we have Ridley, Hopkins, and AJ Brown. Now, Edwards-Helaire is going off the board, so we have Ridley open. So we're 2 picks through. We have both the options that we have targeted in this. So we have Calvin Ridley. I'm interested just in I've talked about the strategy of getting Kyler Murray in the 5th round already. So I don't know if you want to think of that for the DeAndre Hopkins side, but I'm interested in that. But I'm happy with Ridley as well. I'm a big Ridley fan. So any way of talking you into DeAndre Hopkins, or are we going with Ridley? I think Ridley's the way to go. I think we can get some Cardinals pieces maybe a little bit later if we wish.
So we have 20 seconds. So real quick, I'll just say that Sean and I really talked a lot about Rondale Moore and liking him. So if we were fine and we both agree that we like Rondale Moore and we wanted to stack someone with Kyler, I would be looking to stack Rondale Moore with Kyler later in the draft and going Ridley here, which we just decided to do. I really like that.
I think I'm going to do this throughout. I'm just going to ask you questions with 20 seconds to go because you don't know if I'm going to. For the listeners, I'm controlling the draft board here at the moment. So
yeah.
I could hear the anticipation in your voice. You were just wondering what was going to happen. So yeah.
Well, I'm trying to get it in. I'm trying to get it in on time.
That was I was going to click the pick anyway, regardless. But no, I agree with the Rondale Moore pick in terms of, I think we can get some of those guys a little bit later. And there Hopkins went to Frank Duffy in the next pick. So he was probably along a similar thought process. But still, I think that the 5th round quarterback is going to be where we're looking a little bit later, hopefully. But so what our target now moving back around is as Devontae Adams goes off the board, we're looking into the 3rd round. We're going to be kind of looking at the likes of Justin Jefferson, Terry McLaurin, or CeeDee Lamb. So we do have Justin Jefferson still on the board. I have highlighted Terry McLaurin as the one that I would be most interested in, but that was a realistic target. I didn't think Justin Jefferson would be on the board. So if Justin Jefferson is there when it gets back to us, I think that I will be likely putting in the pitch to take him, Terry McLaurin, CeeDee Lamb, my other targets. Anyone else you're targeting? I know we have Kyle Pitts as well. Let me not forget about that. But what's your thoughts here as we are 6 picks away?
Yeah, I'm fine with kind of going in the direction of Terry McLaurin if you want to. CeeDee Lamb, I think, is an option as well. But if we do have in our minds that we want to maybe consider stacking Kyler Murray with Rondale Moore, then it wouldn't make a lot of sense to consider also stacking Dak Prescott with a guy like CeeDee Lamb, because now we're just talking about not being able to get 2 quarterbacks. Of course, not everything has to be a stack. We could still get CeeDee Lamb on his own, and that would be a solid pick. I'd be most interested in seeing if Kyle Pitts, for some reason, actually made it to us at the 305. Then that's when decision time, I think, kind of reared its ugly head, and we have to decide what we want to do. Surprised to see A.J. Brown still there. He just went. But we are getting pretty close. We're likely going to have a choice possibly between Justin Jefferson, Kyle Pitts, and then CeeDee Lamb or Terry McLaurin. I think we're in a pretty good spot here. There's been a couple players who were taken in spots that I didn't see them going at.
And Justin Jefferson just went off the board. Yeah. So the last couple of picks have been Jefferson, Brown, Dobbins, Metcalf, and Mixon. So pretty solid picks going in. Jefferson lasting and AJ Brown lasting to a nice spot there. I really think if you're at that 101 this year, you get Christian McCaffrey and you can bounce into those wide receivers to start off. So a really nice move if you were getting the likes of Jefferson and Brown or Metcalf, one of those 3 in there would be really nice. So we're looking at 1 pick away. We have Frank Duffy on the clock ahead of us. So we have Kyle Pitts, CeeDee Lamb, and Terry McLaurin are probably our targets here. I know I mentioned about the reasoning behind if you get Ridley. Oh, Keenan Allen's gone off the board. So if we have quite a discussion here, we have 60 seconds. I didn't think we'd have all these options.
Yeah.
We made USAA insurance to help you save. Take advantage of discounts when you cover your home and your ride. Discover how we're helping members save at USAA.com/bundle. USAA.
The economy is made up of real people doing real stuff, and it affects everything. Which you obviously know since you're a real person doing real stuff. Marketplace is here to help you get smart about everything beyond the what of the day's business and economic news. We dig into the how and the why with the real people driving our economy. From big tech and interest rates to small businesses and what's happening at the Fed. Marketplace breaks it all down so you don't have to. Listen to Marketplace wherever you get your podcasts.
I think that my disagreement with Pitts is if we go with him and Ridley, we're really dug into that Atlanta offense. I know they're going to get the majority of the volume, but that's my main concern there. Terry McLaurin, I didn't really know if CeeDee Lamb would be on the board, so I'm going to let you take it away. With 36 seconds to go, you can do the pitch and we'll go with your decision.
I mean, I think the Kyle Pitts is so interesting. I really do like CeeDee Lamb as well. I'll let you decide here, Colin. We talked about this. You're ultimately making the choice here with 20 seconds to go. I'm fine with doing an Atlanta stack. I think we could get Ryan later if we wanted to, but I also really do love CeeDee Lamb.
We're going Pitts, but there's no more tight ends. Is that agreed?
Yeah, that's cool. Let's do that.
So that was, you pitched that to me this morning. I didn't really think that I was going to go towards it. I do think that a little bit later, I think if you're going for those two guys, it's going to make a little bit of sense to reach on that quarterback too. If we have to go a little bit earlier to get Matt Ryan as our second quarterback, if we get one of these guys in the 5th round, I just think that makes sense. If you're thinking that we're going to get volume through those two players, and then we have our quarterback that's giving them that volume, I think if we're looking for upside in the best ball league, I don't think there's a huge amount of sense to getting the two of those guys in there in the first 3 rounds and then not trying to pair it with that quarterback. So that's a decision we'll have to make a little bit later. But I like Matt Ryan, so I'm not against that. But he was somebody who wasn't really in our targets list, so I'm just going to have to adjust that to make sure. My targets at quarterback were kind of one of those guys in the 5th round, and then trying to get Joe Burrow most likely, then. But this is going to free us up to give us more shots at other positions. And who knows, if we do get a value at tight end, we might go there again because of the premium it gives you in the FFPC. But I really don't think there's going to be a huge amount of teams with that Waller, Ridley, Pitts start. I don't think that's going to be an overly common lineup. I think most people aren't going to take that second tight end at that point. So I suppose if you're looking to win a big field contest, I think it's to differentiate yourself as a way to go. So we have the last couple of picks going off the board there is CeeDee Lamb at 310. So great value there for that pick. McLaurin went at 308, who we also talked about. Hawkinson, who I know you like, has gone at the 311, which is, we might actually start a little bit of a chase here on tight end now that we've taken those two guys and Hawkinson's off the board. Let's hope that happens, and that might push some guys down to us. So we're looking into round 4 at this point. Where Hawkinson was one of the guys, the other one was Mark Andrews. So I think both of those guys were off the board for us anyway. DJ Moore and Chris Godwin are my 2 other targets in this range. Have you anyone that you want to make the pitch for?
No, I don't think so at this point in time. Let me go back over here and take just a quick look at who we actually have on the board. But I think that, so right now we're about 7 picks away. We're clearly tight end is off the board at this point in time. The only running back who I'd probably consider as one who we talked about the other day with Sean was Travis Etienne. I know he is rather high on Etienne, and getting him at this spot would be right around his ADP if we wanted to go that route. I'm certainly not, beholden to doing that. But then I also like the wide receiver targets you have down there. I like Chris Godwin. I like DJ Moore. I don't think either of those guys are going to be bad picks. So if it's not Etienne, then I'm completely fine with Godwin or DJ Moore at that point in the draft. It doesn't have any early conflicts with our bye weeks, so I'm fine with that. Not that we really need to worry about bye weeks here too much, but it's always nice to know that these early picks are all kind of going to be playing around the same time, and not missing too many in any single week. One thing I wanted to touch on real quick, just because when we do talk about it, you had mentioned Joe Burrow as being one of your targets. With where the Cincinnati Bengals wide receivers are going, would you still consider doing Bengals wide receivers over these next couple rounds, realizing that we could still get Joe Burrow possibly and Kyler Murray later on? Because Matt Ryan is going after both those quarterbacks. So if we didn't get them, we could probably still fall back on Ryan later on in the draft. He has an ADP of, I believe, like 155, and Burrows is sitting there at 97.6. So we could still essentially, if we wanted to, target Bengals and Burrow and possibly land that, and then realize that Matt Ryan is more of a fallback option than a guy we want to stack with Ridley and Pitts.
Yeah, and this is another good part for the people listening in who, when we talked in the previous show about some of the spreadsheets we are using, for example, when I have my target list in those 2 rounds, so we have basically Joe Burrow is usually going in round 9, Matt Ryan's usually going in round 10, but we have what running back targets kind of in that for the 0RB build. And Joe Burrow is in with those guys, and then Matt Ryan's in with some guys in the next round. And what I've written beside those is likely opposite to the round before, depending on quarterback. So depending if we take a quarterback or not, that's definitely something. I'm all in on the Bengals and those wide receivers. They're all targets in this draft, so we'll see what happens moving forward. We are on the clock. We do have DJ Moore available. We have Chris Godwin. There's obviously running backs available. I'm not interested in any of those. I think for me, DJ Moore is my clear pick here. I really don't have any concerns. I would take Godwin if you had a push for it, but I'm very happy to take DJ Moore here.
Yeah, let's do DJ Moore.
This is the other thing. Again, I should have left it a little bit later to keep the anticipation for Zach as the clock ticks down, but there's 26 seconds left in the clock. Something I always try and do is use that clock, because what's going to happen when we talk through these picks, or when you're thinking through your process in your head, as the draft goes along. Having that extra 30 seconds before you have to make the pick as the thing comes back around is going to help you. So I always load up the pick and just have my finger over the draft button ready to go. But it just gives you that little bit of time then too, especially if you're trying to do a podcast while drafting. It gives you that little bit of extra time. So a little bit of an inside tip there. So we are waiting then. Oh, and Frank Duffy has gone for Kyler Murray. So it's 409. Murray is off the board. So that is gone. So that's where taking somebody like Hopkins can be a risk if you wanted to stack him. It's very, very hard to do that. Now, you mightn't want to stack, as we mentioned, you might just want to take him and that's okay. But if that is your strategy, it's very hard to plan for players going very much ahead of ADP. And that's something that we'll probably talk about throughout this is if you're in a league like this, ADP can kind of go out the window from time to time. And my advice would be if you have somebody that you really, really want and there's around or 6 picks of ADP of a difference, just go and get them. A bit like we did with Waller. Waller's going around 108, 109. We took him at 105. You want your guy, go and get him. If it's a half a round, if it's a round difference, we might get into that discussion later on when it comes to the situation we may find ourselves in with the Jaguars wide receivers in terms of which one we take there first. So it's going to be interesting, but that's obviously Murray off the board. Jamar Chase goes, Chris Godwin goes. So what are we looking at here? We're 2 picks away.
So one thing, Colin, that I would be interested in hearing your thoughts on really quickly if this happens, which if he makes it through the 3rd overall pick here, I can't imagine Frank will be taking him at the 4th pick here, would actually be Lamar Jackson, who I think we can kind of take a similar approach to as we were planning to do with Kyler Murray, with a elite quarterback, pairing him with a rookie wide receiver, a stud, who is ironically, literally the same situation, a high rushing volume quarterback who is going to have a rookie wide receiver who could make a big impact. In this case, with Lamar Jackson, I'd be looking to possibly pair him with Rashad Bateman, who has got an ADP of, I believe, around the 11th or 12th round. So that would be another more than capable stack that we could go for. And it would be something that I think would be a nice pivot off of Murray and Rondale Moore, which we originally talked about doing with the assumption that we were going to get Kyler, which obviously didn't work out. Do you have any thoughts on the idea of pivoting to that?
Oh, I'm like Lamar Jackson's my pick here. If Frank doesn't go back-to-back quarterbacks, hopefully he doesn't. Dak Prescott's the other one that's in there with an opportunity, But I really think that the reason I like Murray and I like Lamar so much is it's a bit like if you're playing them in DFS, you can play them without wide receivers and there are other playmakers at times because what they can do on the ground is just so important. So you're basically getting a running back and a quarterback combined. So there's just so much upside. So Tyler Lockett goes off the board. I don't even know if we need to stack later on, but the options are so cheap. Even if you go for a Marquise Brown later on, compared to his value last year, there's just. And look, we're playing baseball. You don't have to pick when you're starting him. If he gets 3 or 4 touchdowns this year, they're going to come from Lamar Jackson, and the upside then is going to be there in those weeks. So I'm very, very happy. Lamar Jackson is my pick here. Have you any temptation to go for Prescott over Jackson, or would you only be doing that if you had, let's say, a CeeDee Lamb at this point?
I think in this case, I would have been more tempted with one of these elite talent wide receivers if we would have had one of them. In this case, we don't. The thing that really draws me to Bateman, not only is the fact that he's got an ADP that's later than Marquise Brown, but I think realistically, if it's not Mark Andrews leading the team in total targets, it's going to be Bateman, and I think Bateman's a lock to lead the team in wide receiver targets. So to know that we can get a target leader in an offense, that should be very good. Late in the draft, to pair with just an explosive quarterback like Lamar Jackson, I think is a really solid play here, a good opportunity to capitalize, rather late and at a cheap cost on what should be a high upside offense. And now we really don't have to worry about our quarterback 2 for a minute here. I think the door is wide open for us to look into the Bengals stack that we were talking about getting with Bengals wide receivers still on the board. We probably won't get T. Higgins, but Tyler Boyd could very realistically be there for us. And then either Joe Burrow or perhaps even Matt Ryan later on in the draft is fine. I think the way this has played out is set up perfectly for us. I wouldn't even be surprised to see that Lamar Jackson was actually the pick here all along, and that maybe Kyler going where he did was perhaps a little bit early. By ADP, it is early. I would kind of expect it to be reflective of that at the end of the season as well. So I think getting Lamar Jackson here is a bit of the steal for us.
Yeah, I would have went either way. I would have went, if Jackson went ahead of us, I would have took Murray if Murray goes. And there's a lot of players like that I have on my boards. Like if somebody goes, and that's where planning ahead means that, right, that's where we're going, we're pivoting. And you're not having to just randomly pivot. You're doing it, with kind of anticipation of what's going to happen. So I'm very happy to get him there. I've been drafting him quite a lot. Those two guys are my quarterbacks I'm targeting at that range. I think Dak Prescott's the next one, but I think just the rushing upside of the first two is supreme. The player I probably would have been tempted to reach there, and he's just gone off the board at the 5'10", is T. Higgins. He is somebody who interests me heading into year two. We see those year two wide receivers take a big leap, and I think that he is somebody that's just primed. And I love Jamar Chase. I think there's just monster upside for him coming into the NFL, but maybe as a slow start, maybe things don't work out, and just the sky then is the limit for T. Higgins in year two. So I can see a lot of ways where he actually ends up being the leading scorer in this offense this season. So the players that I'm slotting in here now, I'm just starting to fill in the next round's ticker as we're kind of 9 picks away roughly. I've put in Brandon Ayuk. He is one of my targets. T. Higgins was another target I was hoping to see maybe fall a little bit. Didn't happen. So we're getting into an interesting area in terms of, like, I'm starting to get into, Courtland Sutton, Laviska Shenault, or DJ Chark, depending on the conversation. I'm on the Visca side there, as we talked about earlier, but I'm wondering, have you anyone else that you want to pitch for in this round?
I think this was kind of the round where we had talked about leading into the draft. It's not really a round that we love making picks, and these are all kind of iffy players that each have their own concern, whether it's they're on a bad offense. Maybe we don't know quite what the quarterback situation is going to look like at the start of the season. Maybe they've coming off an injury, or they just don't simply have good quarterback play around them. I think if you were to reach on a player who is a little bit lower than ADP right now, just to get a guy who you feel more confident about, round 6 and round 7 have kind of felt like rounds to do it. We talked about Laviska Shenault at one point in time. We would be getting him just inside of the 70th overall. I'm not quite sure. My mental math is horrible on this, but we'd be getting Laviska Shenault about a round and a half earlier than ADP if we took him here. I know that we like him. I don't know if you like him more than any of these guys at this range, or if maybe we wanted to consider a guy like Tyler Boyd, who in all likelihood could fall to us, still giving us the option for that Joe Burrow stack if we wanted to do that. I think there's a lot of ways we can go here right now, Colin. I'm honestly very, very happy with the way the board is shaping up right now as we get to the 608 pick. Is there any one way that you're leaning more strongly than the other?
I'm quite happy to hold off on running back at this point. I'm just wondering if there is anyone that is piquing your interest at the running back position, maybe that comes in here. I'm still holding off in this dead zone area. The players that I am looking at, that, if we look at our cross-reference as to who we're targeting in this draft, the one player that I have ticked down here that I don't think that you're as interested in as I am is Kenny Golladay. Obviously changing offense this year, heading over to the Giants. I think there's, obviously there's concerns about wide receivers who change teams, but I think we're looking at a number 1 wide receiver. We're looking at him at this point. We're looking at one of the best contested catch wide receivers in the NFL. And we're looking at, like, this is the time for Daniel Jones to step up if he is stepping up. I really think Golladay at this point is worth a shot, but I know he divides a lot of opinion at this point. But, I think if he was, like, with, the Lions and Matthew Stafford still there, I think he's probably going in the 4th round. So I think there's upside. Any interest in Kenny Golladay? And the reason I'm pitching that is Courtland Sutton is probably my other candidate here, and I have a lot of Courtland Sutton shares already, so I'm interested in a little bit more Golladay, who I've taken in recent weeks.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with Kenny Golladay. I think my problem with Kenny Golladay has always kind of been his price. We would be getting him right around that there. The player who's hanging around a bit later than I've expected him to is Kareem Hunt, who I do like as I like him as an early running back candidate. If drafting running back heavy is your approach, Kareem Hunt is a guy who I want kind of as that running back 3, perhaps even a high-end running back 2 on your team, if that's the kind of build you're going for. In this case, we're not looking to get running back, and now he just went, so we don't have to worry about that now. I was
going to talk you out of that decision as well. So
were you? Okay,
but he is gone.
You don't have to now. He's gone. If you wanted to go with Kenny Golladay, I don't have a problem with doing that. I think at this point in time, we have other wide receiver targets who are still on the board here. We could get him, and then we could still go back with another wide receiver as well.
Yeah,
now, we just lost Galladay, so I'm going to give you the floor.
Here's where the decision making comes in. So I think Cortland Sutton for me is the pick. I think we could, take that jump and go for Laviska Shenault, but I think we'll get it. We might have an option to get him in the next round. I think we're too early here. As much as I do like him, I think we'll probably end up having an opportunity to him in round 7. So I think Sutton is my option here, unless you have a different preference. I think we still stick to getting those wide receivers, particularly because we took 2 tight ends to start off to fill out that wide receiver depth.
Yeah, if you want to go with Sutton, we can. I don't mind the Jaguars wide receivers. I guess my question would come down to if we wanted to pair him with a quarterback, are we better with Lawrence or Burrow? But if you wanted to take Sutton right now, and then we can kind of talk out Jaguars versus Bengals with our next pick, I'm fine with that.
Yeah, so I'm happy. It just gives us some options. I have no interest in the quarterback situation in Denver unless my heart breaks and Aaron Rodgers is there come the first week of the season. But in terms of pairing him up, I'm not too concerned. I just like the player. Obviously, coming back off the injury, I think we're getting the injury discount. Jerry Jeudy's there, who I also like, and I have had a lot of drafts recently where him and Jeudy have gone very close together, and I'm not afraid to Again, like I mentioned with the quarterback situation with Murray and Jackson, I'm happy to take shares of both of them as we go through the draft season. I think both of them have their upsides. It's very, very hard to call which one is going to be the wide receiver 1, but I think the skill set that we have with Sutton paired with the quarterbacks that are currently there at the moment has the most upside. So I am very much on board with if we have to get Lawrence later, happy with him, and happy with Burrow, happy with both of those guys if we do end up going that way. So the one now that we're looking towards is trying to pick what's going to be left when we get to the following round. So just interested in your thoughts on obviously the ADP in this range is probably to go Chark when we get another 5 or 6 picks down the line. Viska then is going a round and a half after that. I have been taking Laviska Shenault over Chark. So am I crazy for that? Do you think there's a clear path for Chark to, is there a clear consensus wide receiver 1 out of the 2 at the moment?
I think that because of what we've seen in the past and just remembering back to last season, I think we tend to tell ourselves that DJ Chark is probably going to be the consensus wide receiver 1 there, but I'm not so sure that that's going to necessarily be the case. I think that Laviska Shenault, he entered the season last year, I believe, with a little bit of an injury. He was a little bit slow to get started. On top of that, we've got the whole COVID situation going on. It was a weird off season for all rookies and just the NFL in general. And players were not prepared to, enter the league under normal circumstances, which I think may have negatively affected some. Now, here in this case, as we're discussing it, we just lost DJ Chark. Now, my question to you would be, are you okay with just outright reaching for Viska with some of the other guys on the board? Mind you, we don't need tight ends, so we'd be looking at guys like Odell Beckham, Michael Carter, Juju Smith-Schuster, Robbie Anderson, Jerry Jeudy. Tyler Boyd is the other one we've come back to a couple times. And I think that if we're going to go with a Bengal or with a Jaguar in these cases, the question may come down to which quarterback are we maybe willing to reach a little bit on to make sure that we get that stack if that's something that we truly want to do.
Yeah, I think we're in a situation, and again, I don't think we lost him. I think the pick would have been Laviska. But in terms of, this is a game of trying to get the value as well. So we may lose him in these next 2 picks, but I think Laviska Shenault, 1 pick to go, still we have an option to get him. So I think like what we did there was we could have took him in the last round. We've waited. We may get him here. We may lose out. I think the other options here would be Tyler Boyd. I think the problem we're going to have with the likes of Tyler Boyd, that we're not going to be able to pair him with Joe Burrow. I don't think Burrow gets back to us at current ADP. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think we see the 2 of them go in close succession. So as much as I like Boyd, I'd probably pass there, and I think I would take Shenault. So Odell Beckham goes off the board. Shenault is available. A slight little bit higher than ADP, but the call here for me would be between Tyler Boyd and Shenault, and I think Boyd is going to be the wide receiver 2, the wide receiver 3 on that offense. I think Shenault could potentially be the highest scoring wide receiver in that, particularly in PPR. So
my only question to you is, you have no interest in waiting till later to pair Matt Ryan with Pitts and Ridley then? Because that would be the other thing we could do. And then we could get which wide receiver we liked better. But I'm good with it.
I'm taking Chenault, though. I'm not taking a quarterback.
Yeah. No. You can take Chenault here if you want to. That's fine. We can go with Chenault, and then we can. So my question then is, do we want to go with perhaps Trevor Lawrence later or Matt Ryan then in these cases, realizing that we're going to have kind of both to our disposal later on down the line?
Yeah, no, that's sorry, I misunderstood the question.
Yeah,
yeah, we weren't going to be able to pair Burrow, so I think I was going to pass there. Now, if he gets back, he gets back, but I don't think the value in taking Boyd over Chenault is there. So I think unless we took a step forward and took the quarterback, and then it was just going to be the quarterback on his own. So again, we are looking obviously to just win our weeks, and it's probably going to be a situation. We'll see if we pair Lamar, but it's going to be a situation where it's going to be trying to, I think, get Matt Ryan here in this next round. The other players that are going to be, I'm going to start loading up the clock here for us, but the running backs that I'm interested in is James Conner and Zach Moss. Any interest in those two guys?
These are two players who Sean and I both talked about the other day, and I honestly like both of them. I think that Zach Moss is probably the more clear-cut starter in Buffalo compared to James Conner, who I don't think is going to have a starting role. But I can also see a lot of weeks where James Conner is, punching in 1 to 2 touchdowns, maybe getting you enough games to have some double-digit scoring weeks. I think that Moss is probably going to be the player who might offer a little bit more upside just in terms of the kind of role he's going to have with Buffalo as a starting running back. So if Moss was here, I would probably lean Moss over Conner. I'm not sure if you feel more strongly one way or another to those two guys. I just think with Conner, we're probably chasing more rushing upside. With Moss, I think we could be chasing a little bit more. I'm sorry, with Conner, we might be chasing a little more touchdown upside. With Moss, I think there's a chance that we're chasing more volume upside as a whole, realizing he'll probably also obviously find the end zone throughout the season.
Yeah, I think with both of those guys, the thing I like to target as well when we're looking at these maybe not first choice running backs is they're in high scoring offenses. They're going to get chances, whether it's, the problem as well is that both quarterbacks will, like to rush the ball on themselves. So you can lose that inside the red zone, but you also will have more opportunities inside the red zone for these. So when we're targeting kind of zero RB targets, we're looking at them that are going to get that upside as well of getting in there. I think I agree 100% with the Zach Moss comment. I think he is the preferred option. I think then James Conner is, and I've been drafting both of them. The other one we'll probably start to look at it in a few moments as well as AJ Dillon. I think there's, again, in a hopefully high scoring offense, we're going to see him get opportunities, and I think he'll get a lot of. The only problem is I don't think he'll get as much as the receiving work, so that's going to be a downside to him. I think we're going to see the similarities probably as well with Conner and Moss. The receiving upside probably isn't there as much with those guys, but the touchdown upside should be there. So I think they're the guys that are in play. But are you gonna? Do you think here I think we make a choice here to go early and to take Matt Ryan. I think that's the call here is, do we go with our first running back or do we go with Matt Ryan early? Joe Burrow is still on the board, but we are, as we look at it, about 8 picks away.
Yeah, so I'm looking at it right now because if you look at the ADP that we're showing on FFPC compared to the ADP that we have on our spreadsheet that we prepared here, the Matt Ryan ADP is very different from what we have on our spreadsheet. And I think that maybe because we're looking at a more recent ADP than the FFPC is probably showing a wider range. So the question I would have is whether or not people will be reaching on Ryan at the more recent ADP that we're showing compared to the ADP that we're seeing, which would suggest that he would be going more towards the 12th or 13th round. With some of these other running backs still on the board, with some of these other quarterbacks still on the board, I question whether or not people would actually be looking to take him. In this case, I'm willing to kind of say if whatever makes you feel most comfortable doing here to make sure we get it, I would say we should probably go that route. But I would be curious to see just how late some of these other running backs may last, realizing that the FFPC is just slightly different compared to what we are seeing here. If I pull up the Best Ball FFPC command center real quick here, which I will do if you just give me one moment, I just want to see what that's showing us in terms of recent draft picks, which we talked about the FFPC command center on previous shows. It's a really fun tool to kind of use when you're doing these drafts. You can plug your team in and take a look at what's been going on recently in drafts and look at ADP ranges and kind of get a sense for where your draft may fall as you're planning it out. So I'm just kind of getting it to load up here to see if maybe Matt Ryan would be available. Do you think that it's necessary to reach for that stack right now, or do we want to kind of gamble that something would come around later on where
I'm actually, you're kind of talking me into it. The reason I'm looking at the quarterbacks remaining. So we have Matthew Stafford in terms of ADP on the FFPC: Stafford, Brady, Rodgers, Tannehill, Lawrence, and then Matt Ryan. So we do have, those options. They're either Lawrence or Ryan, or Stafford's just gone off the board, but one of those two is definitely going to make us back to us in the next round. So I think that's a good call. I think if Zach Moss is here, I think he's probably the play for us. So we're one pick away. We have Zach Moss, but I'm open to other suggestions. But I think we hold off and see if we can get him in the next round coming back here. Is Moss your player, or are we on board with that?
Yeah, I'm absolutely fine with Moss here. I think Matt Ryan could possibly make it back to us in the 11th round. Or I'm sorry, in the 10th round. We would go 8th and 9th pick here, and then we would hopefully be able to get Matt Ryan in the 10th round. Again, we have some quarterbacks up here. The other thing that would be interesting to see is there's really no incentive for anyone to take Matt Ryan unless they just run him out by himself.
That was my other thought process as well. There's not a huge advantage for somebody else to try and stack Ryan, so that takes his value down a little bit. Just looking at the board here, the overall board as we look at it. So team 1 has 1 quarterback, team 2 has no quarterbacks, team 3 has 1, team 4 has 1, team 5 has 1, team 6 has none, team 7 has 1, team 8 has 2, team 9 has 1, team 10 has 0, team 11 has 0, team 12 has 2. So on the basis of that, on the wraparound, so we're on the clock here. I think Zach Moss is our pick. Is that where we're going?
Yeah, I'm completely fine with